Addiction has absolutely destroyed my life, from my careers to my family to being able to get a fair shot at something successful.
I tried to be just like the worst kind of person that I could be when I was on drugs, and then I just lost myself. I just didn't know, I didn't recognize who I was anymore.
I pretty much threw all the opportunities away in my life due to my addiction. You know, it has taken my family, my friends, it's taken myself.
I watched my son turn from a healthy, strong, muscular youth to a skinny shadow of his former self.
Through high school, you know, I graduated with a 3.98 GPA. I was salutatorian in my class. I ended up getting sent to a military school because I went to Simi Valley High School, and I ended up getting expelled for getting caught selling weed at school. Me smoking weed, it was really, I was addicted to this head change, because when I was smoking, something was happening to me, and it started to make me feel different. It made me escape reality. And I eventually became an EMT, an emergency medical technician. And I did that for about 3 years, till I was about 22 years old. And I picked up my first DUI, driving under the influence of painkillers, alcohol, Xanax, weed. And I went to jail for my first time at 22 years old. And when I went into jail, you know, I thought I was super cool and had all these friends. And I remember by the time I'm getting out, you know, I didn't have a penny to my name. You know, I had no family. My family wouldn't talk to me. I hadn't spoke with them in years. Nowhere to go, no job, nothing whatsoever. You know, I've been to jail, you know, over 20 times, you know, 20, 30 times. I've lost several jobs. I've lost relationships, you know. I've lost a girlfriend that overdosed on heroin and died. My family lives out here in Simi Valley. And during my addiction, it had been over 5 or 6 years that I hadn't even been able to speak with them. You know, I had little brothers that, you know, were growing up out here. And my parents, you know, wouldn't accept it, you know, to let me come around the house, you know, and that hurts, you know. It's made them lose trust in me. You know, my family was disappointed in me. You know, they knew that I had to learn it on my own, and that's what I did. I basically did, you know, what was suggested. You know, I went to these rooms out here, you know, program of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and I found some hope, you know, and little by little, the only thing I didn't do right was, you know, not pick up a drug anymore. And little by little, my life started to get a little bit better.
I grew up in a pretty good family. And then when I hit high school, I mean, I guess I always really had friends, but I didn't have very many friends. But when I hit high school, I was like super into boys all of a sudden. And so when I met a guy and he asked me to go to a party, that was my first time I took a drink. And after that, it only took me a year to go from drinking to shooting up drugs. And then I became a victim to abuse. I was always with older guys that were drug dealers, running around with people that were not good for me, thinking that that was the cool thing to do. And I knew that I could get drugs. I knew that I could, free drugs, especially with the older guys. I sold my body for drugs. I sold my body for money because that's all that I had. And I just completely lost myself. I was with this guy, and I was at his house. He was a pretty big drug dealer at the time, and he had laid his hands on me, and he was the kind of person that scared me. I didn't want to leave because he was like pointing guns at girls for over $40 that they owed him, and so I was scared to kind of get out of that situation, but I had drugs at the same time, so I was like cool with it. And I stayed there for a while, and then I remember I really wanted to get out and I wanted to go and try and get clean. So I had called a sober living, and I had got into a sober living, but the guy wouldn't let me leave. I had to hop out of the bathroom window to escape, and then he chased me down the street, and I was scared for my life. And then after I finally escaped, and I got to a sober living, and then I found out that I was pregnant. And then everything changed from there. I don't know if that was God's way of telling me that everything's gonna be okay, that I could live for somebody else other than myself and take responsibility for my life, just so I could raise somebody and give him more than what I've ever had. But that was the lowest point for me, is realizing like I have nothing. I'm 3 months pregnant and I've been shooting up the whole time, and I had no idea. And I owe my life to this person, and it's about time to change.
What influenced me to start using drugs is that 12 years old, I was in junior high school. Kind of the in crowd was drinking every weekend and smoking marijuana. And I wanted to be one of the cool kids. And I wanted to fit in with that group. I know what it's like to be in your addiction. I know what it's like to be miserable and absolutely hate yourself on a daily basis. I know what it's like to lose your family, your friends, your loved ones, and to pretty much throw away all the opportunities in your life. I was stealing from my family. I sold pretty much everything they owned, and they didn't have a lot. I was stealing from my brother. I was stealing from my friends, and in return, I lost my family for a while. They didn't want anything to do with me. I didn't have a conversation with my brother for 5 years. I had a lot of friends die, and I would be at the funerals, and instead of being there to support them, I was just trying to get to my car so I could shoot up. And when I would talk to people about my friend passing away, I would tell them that's just part of the game. He knew what he was doing, you know, that's kind of what we expect. I was very cold and very cold-hearted at that time. I've done every drug that you can possibly do. I was strung out on heroin on a daily basis for 10 years. I've been to jail 33 times. I've gotten 4 DUIs. I've been to countless treatment centers. I've been to over 30 funerals and buried friends from overdose. Addiction ruined my life. I gave up on myself a long time ago, and I truly believed that I was gonna die an overdose death from heroin. I was gonna be the same person at 18 as I would be today at 36, and I really gave up on any kind of confidence, self-esteem that I had built at a very young age, and it made it really difficult to get that back. I had a friend named David that gave me a call, and he was in a residential treatment center, and he told me flat out, I've known you for 20 years. I'm your only friend, and you're a loser, and you need to get help. And I have help lined up for you. And that day I was actually really sick. I thought about it, and he was right. I had one friend left in life. Nobody wanted anything to do with me, and it was time that I needed to change my life. And I took an opportunity, and I was able to run with that opportunity and change my life.
My son started experimenting with marijuana when he was 15. That progressed to things like ecstasy and Molly and eventually pills. This was all in high school. Eventually pills led to heroin. He overdosed many times. Once was in our home. I had just gotten the other kids off to school, and I heard labored breathing coming from his room. So I went in and I saw him there struggling to breathe and blue, and tried to wake him up, and he didn't wake. So I called the paramedics, and by the time they got there, I had woken him up a little bit, but he was not able to hear. So he didn't understand what I was saying to him. So I had to write things down. I wrote questions on paper. I said, "What did you take?" I wrote it down on paper, and he couldn't answer. They got him on the stretcher, and they wheeled him to the ambulance, and on the way to the ambulance, he was able to look at me and shake his head and say, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry." he came home from the hospital and immediately turned around and went back out on the streets searching for more drugs. Eventually, I realized that he wasn't going to make it if things were the same, if things continued. And I thought to myself, what can I do? How can I get him away from the stuff that has such a hold on him? And the only thing I could think of was, we got to go to the wilderness. So I planned a trip. I said, okay, where can we go? And I eventually found the John Muir Trail in California, and I didn't know anything about hiking or backpacking, but I figured it out. I got ourselves a permit, and I eventually went and I put him in the car, and we were living in Missouri at the time. I drove to California and drove up to the John Muir Trail, and I strapped on 45-pound backpacks on each of us, and we started hiking, and we hiked for 93 miles, and he got strong and he got healthy, and there came a time when the first 3 days were miserable. I kept having to say, come on, Sam, you can do this, and he wanted to quit, but after the third day, the tables kind of turned, and he started pulling me along and saying, come on, Mom, you can do it. It was not easy. You can do it, Mom, you can do it. And he led me up Donahue Pass, which is 11,000 feet or so, and he got up there first and was so excited. Anyway, by the end of this trip, he was much stronger and healthy and clean, and he was excited about life. And we went back to Missouri, and he hooked up with a friend who was from Ohio, who he had met in the boarding school, and they were going to go to Ohio and get an apartment and get jobs, and off they went. And he got 2 jobs. He was so excited. He hadn't been able to work because of his addiction in a year and a half or so. So he got 2 jobs. He was very excited, had friends that he enjoyed. They had a good crowd. He was having a good time. But that drug had a hold on him. I got a call one morning that his friend had found him dead of an overdose. And that's the end of that story.
My experience has taught me that, that getting high at such a young age resulted in a really negative way in my life as I got older. It's taught me that drugs are real, and that normal people like myself, that can never picture themselves getting high, end up strung out on a street corner with a needle in their arm.
This experience, it's taught me that no matter where your life has taken you, no matter what choices you've made, there's always a way out, and there's always somebody out there that's willing to reach out and help you. It's just, you need to put in your foot forward, and you need to put in the effort into changing your life and get uncomfortable and ask for help.
My experience has taught me that everything that I've walked throughout my whole entire life, throughout my disease of addiction, is that I get to use that as my strength today to help another individual.
It's taught me that skepticism is an important skill. And I think more than anything, I would like young people to know that the only person that really can take care of them is themselves.